Hello and welcome to Challenge Your Mind, Change the World, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of communication and critical thinking, and how these essential skills can transform our relationships and our futures with our teens. I'm your host, Francesca Hudson, the classic high school teacher, a writer, entrepreneur, and an advocate for meaningful conversations. Each episode, I explore strategies and share insights on how parents can enhance their communication with their children. It's not just about talking, it's about listening, understanding, and fostering an environment where critical thinking thrives. I'm here to equip you with the tools not only for immediate improvements in your family interactions, but also to set up our teens for long-term success in every aspect of their lives. So whether you're on your morning commute or winding down for the evening, join me as we unlock the potential of our conversations to shape a brighter, more thoughtful world. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome back to Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. I'm Francesca, the classic high school teacher, and today we're talking about something that almost every teenager eventually experiences. Cramming. The late night panic study, the I'll do it tomorrow cycle, the massive study sessions right before a test, that emotional roller coaster of trying to force an entire topic into the brain in one night. We have all been there. We all know that feeling of the big test is looming. And honestly, most teenagers don't cram because they're lazy. They cram because they're overwhelmed. And today I want to talk not just about study habits, but about the teen nervous system, memory, stress, and why consistency works so much better for the brain than panic-based studying. Because once parents understand what's happening neurologically, a lot of teen behaviour suddenly makes far more sense. One of the biggest misconceptions around studying is the idea that learning is simply about putting information into the brain. But memory doesn't actually work that way. The brain needs repetition, retrieval, rest, emotional safety, and spacing over time. In other words, learning is biological. And the teenage brain is still developing the systems responsible for planning, organisation, impulse control, emotional regulation, and time management, which means many teens genuinely struggle to accurately estimate how long tasks will take, or accurately estimate how much effort something requires, or how quickly memory fades, or when they should begin. So often what looks like bad choices is actually a developing executive function system colliding with overwhelm. And here's where the nervous system becomes incredibly important, because cramming usually happens in a stress state, right? Your teen suddenly realizes, oh no, there's a test tomorrow, panic stations, and immediately the nervous system shifts into threat mode. Adrenaline might rise, cortisol might rise, panic kicks in. Now, ironically, many teenagers mistake this adrenaline spike for motivation because suddenly they can focus. Suddenly they're alert, suddenly they're driven. But stress focus is not the same thing as calm learning. And while adrenaline can create short bursts of intense attention, it's often terrible for long-term memory retention, especially when the brain is exhausted already. A stressed nervous system prioritizes survival, not deep understanding, not long-term storage or flexible thinking. This is why many teens can know information the night before an exam and then completely blank during the actual test. Parents often say, but they studied for hours. Yes, they did, but the nervous system was overloaded, and overloaded brains don't store information effectively. One of the most important things teens need to understand is this. Memory strengthens through repeated retrieval over time, not through one giant study marathon. The brain actually learns through spacing. So tiny exposures repeated consistently are far more powerful than massive bursts once in a while. And this is actually backed by cognitive science. When information is revisited repeatedly over days and weeks, the brain starts recognizing, this matters, keep this. And then those neural pathways in the brain start to strengthen, and then recall becomes faster. And then stress decreases because familiarity increases. And so that means that confidence increases because the brain has seen the material multiple times before. So if we look at that idea of consistency, it literally changes how threatening school feels. Now, here's the important part. Consistency does not mean studying for 4 hours every single night. That's where many teens immediately shut down, even at the thought of that. Because overwhelmed brains hear the word consistency and imagine endless pressure. But often the most effective study systems are surprisingly small. 10 focused minutes, 1 retrieval practice session, 1 flashcard round, 1 paragraph plan, 1 worked example, 1 recap before bed. You get the idea. Tiny, consistent actions regulate the nervous system far better than giant panic sessions because the brain starts experiencing study as manageable, predictable, contained, not catastrophic. I think many teenagers today are trapped in what I call the avoidance panic cycle. And it usually looks like this. The task feels overwhelming, so the brain avoids it to reduce stress. Temporary relief happens. But in the background, anxiety quietly grows because the task still exists, it's still there. So then eventually panic arrives close to the deadline, and panic finally creates enough adrenaline to force that action. So a teen accidentally trains their nervous system to rely on stress hormones to begin tasks. This is incredibly common. It is especially common for anxious teens, ADHD teens, perfectionist teens, and overwhelmed learners. And unfortunately, over time, the brain can become addicted to urgency. Calm studying feels too slow, too boring, too unstimulating. But actually, calm consistency is actually where long-term learning happens. I also think cramming damages confidence in ways parents don't always notice, because when teens repeatedly experience exhaustion, blanking in tests, forgetting information, unfinished study, emotional breakdowns before exams, they often begin believing I'm bad at studying, or I'm not smart, or I can't handle school, when actually the system they're using is the problem, not their intelligence. And this is why nervous system support matters so much in education. A regulated nervous system learns far better, processes better, recalls better, plans better, and copes better under pressure. So instead of only asking how do we make teens study more, I think we also need to ask how do we make studying feel safer and more manageable for their brain? Because overwhelmed brains resist, safe brains engage. One thing I encourage parents to focus on is reducing the emotional weight around studying, not removing accountability, but reducing catastrophe. Because some teens approach study sessions already expecting failure, or they're already tense, already ashamed, already convinced that they're behind. And that emotional state matters neurologically. The brain learns differently under chronic stress. So small wins become incredibly important. Tiny moments of, I actually remembered that, or I can do one small section, or that only took 10 minutes, or I understood more than I thought. Those moments, those tiny moments, slowly rebuild academic confidence. And I also think consistency teaches something much bigger than school success. It teaches self-trust. When teens repeatedly show up in small ways, the brain begins learning, I can rely on myself. That matters far more than just simply exams. And honestly, many successful adults are not people who are naturally gifted. They're people who learned sustainable consistency. So if your teenager is stuck in the cramming cycle, I would encourage you not to immediately jump to, they need more discipline. Sometimes they need smaller starting points, lower nervous system pressure, more structure, more predictability, visual systems, shorter study sprints, clearer routines, emotional safety around mistakes, because once the nervous system stops viewing study as a threat, consistency becomes so much easier to build. And ultimately, this is the big idea I want parents and teens to remember today. Learning is not supposed to feel like constant emergency mode. The brain was not designed to thrive under endless panic. Consistency works because it works with the brain instead of against it. Tiny, repeated actions, calm repetition, low pressure retrieval, predictable routines. That's where real long-term confidence is built. If you'd like to explore this further, you can check out my toolkit called the Study Struggles Reset. I will link it in the show notes below. It's a great starting point if you want to start to look at some of the ways that we can break study down into easy and manageable steps for our teens' nervous systems. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. And if you know another parent who is currently living through the last-minute panic study cycle with their teen, feel free to share this episode with them. I'll talk to you again next time. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. I hope you found our discussion enriching and that you're walking away with new ideas to enhance communication and critical thinking within your own family. If you enjoyed this episode and are finding value in our conversations, please take a moment to rate us on your favourite podcast platform. Your feedback not only supports us, but also helps other parents discover the tools they need to foster stronger relationships and critical thinking skills with their teens. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who you think could benefit from our today's topic. I'm Francesca Hudson, and I look forward to joining you again next time as we continue to challenge our minds and change the world. Until then, keep thinking critically and communicating effectively.